Getting home late, I saw the notification from Amazon. Your discreet package has been delivered and signed for. I was about to complain about a wrong address when there was a sudden knock on my door. Standing outside was the Ice Queen CEO from next door, Isabelle Vance. She was holding the open shipping box, leaning against the doorframe with a smirk. If you had ideas about me, you could have just said so. The moment her stilettos crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind her. The blinding light of my phone screen cut through the dim entryway, illuminating Ethan Hayes' exhausted face. The text message on the screen was a cold needle, piercing through his muddled thoughts. Your package, the CEO edition, was signed for in person today at 7:48 p.m. We hope you enjoy your purchase. The fog of a long day of overtime was instantly vaporized by those words. Ethan went rigid, the blood in his veins turning to ice. Signed for, he muttered to himself. He hadn't received any package. How could it be marked as delivered? And that thing, what if someone else had opened it? Suddenly, a more terrifying thought struck him like a bolt of lightning. Next door, what if the package was misdelivered? Next door, who lived next door? Isabelle Vance. His boss, the woman at the office who was as cold as a glacier, whose stare could freeze you solid. The CEO of Apex Innovations. The realization exploded in his mind like a thunderclap. If that package was opened by Isabelle Vance, Ethan's vision went dark. He swayed, stumbling, nearly collapsing to the floor. He could already picture it, the shock, the disgust, and then the volcanic fury that would erupt on her frost-like features. His career, no, his entire life, was about to be incinerated by one goddamn Amazon delivery. No, he had to figure this out. Now, he had to call and ask if the package was delivered anywhere else, anywhere but next door. He had to cling to that one-in-a-million chance. With all his strength, he steadied his trembling fingers, hovering his thumb over the call button, about to press down. Ding-dong. The sharp, clear chime of his doorbell rang out behind him. A cold sweat instantly broke out across Ethan's back. He turned around, stiff as a board. Under the harsh, sterile light of the entryway, the closed front door seemed to radiate a bone-chilling cold. Who could it be? The delivery guy? A friend? Or her? Holding his breath, he practically shuffled across the floor, his trembling hand closing around the cold metal doorknob. He took a deep breath and yanked the door open. The hallway light silhouetted a tall, elegant figure, Isabelle Vance. She was really standing there. Ethan's mind went completely blank. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. All he could do was stare, horrified, at his boss. Isabelle casually rested one hand on the doorframe. In the other, she held the cardboard shipping box, emblazoned with the retailer's massive logo. The box had been torn open. A few styrofoam peanuts had spilled out. She tilted her head slightly. Her cool eyes, usually capable of freezing a man's soul, now held a dangerously playful glint. Her gaze slowly swept over Ethan's terrified face, finally landing on his wide eyes. Her red lips parted. "Mr. Hayes, so sorry to bother you this late." She gave the box in her hand a little shake, the contents rustling softly. A breathtaking smirk curved her lips. "You're always so well-behaved at the office." She paused, taking a deliberate step forward. The sharp click of her heels echoed in the silent hallway, the sound radiating pure pressure. Quite the bold imagination in private, though, aren't we? Ethan's brain whited out with a deafening roar. He felt like he'd been stripped naked and thrown into a blizzard, then immediately set on fire. He wanted to explain, to apologize, to find a crack in the floor and disappear into it, but his throat was clamped shut. All he could manage was a choked, gasping sound. It's over. Everything is over. Career suicide. Fired. Sued for being some kind of creep. 1,000 terrifying thoughts tumbled through his mind. Just as he squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for Isabelle's icy wrath and humiliation, the storm he expected never came. Instead, he felt a wave of warm, fragrant air near his ear. Isabelle's voice was a low, mesmerizing whisper. "If you had ideas about me, you could have just said so." The next second, an irresistible force pushed hard against his chest. Caught off guard, Ethan stumbled backward. Stepping in on her sky-high stilettos, Isabelle Vance powerfully crossed his threshold. With a flick of her wrist, boom. The heavy front door slammed shut behind her, sealing them off from the light and sound of the outside world. After that night, Ethan's life was turned upside down. The apocalypse he'd anticipated never arrived. Instead, it was the beginning of a secret affair. At the office, Isabelle remained the decisive, formidable Ice Queen CEO. Her interactions with Ethan were strictly professional and distant, as if the woman who'd knocked on his door that night was nothing but a phantom. But after work, when the lights of the office tower winked out one by one, Ethan's modest apartment became Isabelle's second home. She would let herself in with a keypad code she now knew by heart, shedding her cold corporate armor like a second skin. She'd curl up on his couch like a lazy, affectionate cat, ordering him to cut up fruit for her or make her coffee. She'd even pat around in one of his oversized t-shirts, barefoot on the hardwood floor, munching on potato chips while laughing shamelessly at some trashy reality TV show. Only at certain moments would her queen-like command return, taking charge of everything. The stark contrast was both intoxicating and terrifying for Ethan. The sweetness was real. The moments of dependence and affection she showed in private made his heart melt. But a persistent anxiety followed him like a shadow. A woman like her, how long could this sudden interest in him possibly last? Would she one day get bored and toss him aside like a worn-out toy? He carefully guarded their secret, savoring the stolen sweetness. One afternoon, Ethan was buried in a critical project report when there was a knock on his office door. "Come in," he said without looking up. The door opened, and a wave of youthful energy washed into the room. The new secretarial intern, Chloe Summers, walked in carrying a mug of coffee, a bright smile on her face. "Ethan, you've been it all morning. I made you some coffee to help you power through." Chloe had started a month ago, assigned to work under him. She was enthusiastic and cheerful, a capable and fast learner who had quickly befriended everyone. Lately, though, Ethan had noticed the intern's enthusiasm toward him was becoming excessive. "Thanks. You could just put it on the desk," Ethan said with a polite nod, his eyes still glued to the computer screen. But Chloe didn't leave. Instead, she took a few steps closer, her voice laced with concern. "Is this project a tough one, Ethan? You look so stressed. Do you want me to help with some of the data entry? I'm a total Excel wizard." "It's fine. I'm almost done," Ethan demurred. His secret relationship with Isabelle made him subconsciously want to keep a professional distance from Chloe. "Oh, come on, don't be like that," Chloe said, either ignoring or not understanding his subtle dismissal. She moved closer still, picking up a document from his desk. "Hey, Ethan, is this data point right? Let me see." As she spoke, she leaned naturally toward him, a strand of her hair brushing against his arm. Just then, the office door was pushed open without any warning. Isabelle Vance stood in the doorway, dressed in a perfectly tailored black power suit, her aura positively glacial. She was holding a file, and her cold gaze swept the room, landing precisely on the close proximity of Ethan and Chloe. The air in the room instantly turned to ice. Ethan's heart dropped. On pure reflex, he jerked back, putting space between himself and the intern. He could clearly see Isabelle's beautiful, almond-shaped eyes narrow, a flicker of something imperceptible and cold flashing within them. Chloe jumped, startled. She straightened up immediately, stammering awkwardly, "Ms. V. Vance. Hello." Isabelle's gaze lingered on Chloe's youthful face for a split second before moving away, her expression unreadable. She looked at Ethan, her voice the usual cool, professional tone. "Mr. Hayes, the materials for the 3 o'clock meeting with Mr. Wallace from Novatech. My office. 10 minutes. Right away, Ms. Vance," Ethan responded, his voice steady, though a thin layer of sweat had broken out on his back. Isabelle didn't spare them another glance. She turned and walked away, the clicks of her heels on the polished floor seeming louder and sharper than usual, as if echoing her displeasure. Chloe stuck her tongue out, patting her chest in relief. "That was terrifying. Ms. Vance's presence is just so intense. Anyway, Ethan, I'll get out of your hair." Ethan mumbled, his mind already fixated on the look Isabelle had given him. That look, it wasn't just a boss's annoyance with a subordinate. It felt more like a cold warning from someone whose territory had just been encroached upon. He shook his head, forcing himself to focus on the report, but the seed of unease in his gut had already begun to spread like ink in water. The unease soon became reality. Chloe's enthusiasm, far from being dampened by Isabelle's interruption, only intensified. She began finding constant excuses to get close to Ethan, lingering after dropping off files to chat about work strategies, coincidentally sitting next to him at lunch to share her homemade bento box, and helpfully bringing him late-night snacks when he worked overtime. The way she looked at him was becoming more and more obvious, filled with admiration and a burgeoning crush. Ethan was getting tired of it, but she was just an intern, a kid new to the professional world. He couldn't be too harsh. He could only try to maintain his distance, his tone polite but remote. But Chloe seemed to interpret this as him playing hard to get, which only made her more forward. These changes were, of course, noticed by Isabelle Vance. At the office, Isabelle's attitude toward Ethan grew even more formal, almost to the point of being deliberately difficult. Her instructions were clipped and curt, her eyes rarely meeting his. She treated him like any other subordinate, and a slightly disappointing one at that. What unsettled him more was that Isabelle had changed after hours, too. She rarely came over to his apartment anymore. Even when she did, she'd just have a quick dinner, watch some TV, and leave. There was no more intimacy. A deliberate distance hung between them, as if their previous closeness had never existed. Ethan's heart ached. He knew this was the calm before the storm. One night, there was a major business dinner with a client, the very same Mr. Wallace from Novatech, a man notorious for being both difficult and lecherous. As Isabelle's executive assistant, Ethan naturally had to attend. The dinner was held in a private room at an exclusive downtown club. After a few rounds of drinks, the atmosphere was cordial enough. Mr. Wallace, red-faced and sporting a prominent beer belly, let his eyes wander a little too often to Isabelle's exquisitely beautiful face, his words laced with a sleazy charm. Ethan sat beside Isabelle, dutifully running interference, deflecting toasts, and trying to block Mr. Wallace's predatory gaze. He could feel that Isabelle's mood tonight was exceptionally dark. A palpable chill radiated from her, and she was drinking more heavily than usual. Just as Ethan finished fending off another round from Wallace and sat back down, Isabelle suddenly stood up. She raised her wine glass, a brilliant smile spreading across her face. But the smile didn't reach her eyes. Instead, it carried a cold, mocking edge. She walked around the long table, heading straight for the empty seat beside Mr. Wallace. Mr. Wallace. Isabelle's voice was deliberately saccharine, a stark contrast to her usual cool tone. We've been so focused on business, I haven't had a proper chance to toast you. Thank you for your continued support of Apex Innovations. Mr. Wallace was floored and flattered. He scrambled to raise his own glass, the wrinkles on his face deepening with his greasy smile. Not all, Ms. Vance. It's my pleasure, my pleasure. You're a true visionary, and so stunningly brilliant. Isabelle let out a soft laugh. Her eyes danced, her gaze flicking pointedly across the table to Ethan, whose face had instantly frozen. Then, she deliberately sat down next to Mr. Wallace, their bodies now incredibly close. You're too kind, Mr. Wallace, Isabelle said, swirling the red wine in her glass. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried clearly to Ethan's ears. It's seasoned, reliable veterans like you that we should all be learning from. Much better than some. She paused intentionally, her gaze once again landing on Ethan, this time filled with undisguised contempt. Young people who are all flash and no substance, with their heads in the clouds. Mr. Wallace was practically preening. His hand started to snake its way toward the back of Isabelle's chair. Ms. Vance, you have a sharp eye for talent. Come, another drink. To our future partnership. The scene, Isabelle smiling, laughing, practically leaning into that repulsive old lek, was a dagger of ice straight to Ethan's heart. He watched her clink glasses with Wallace, watched her ignore him, watched her use herself as bait just to spite him, even tolerating the man's oily presence as he encroached on her space. A firestorm of hurt, fury, and a jealousy so intense it was suffocating erupted in his chest. Crack! Ethan shot to his feet, the legs of his chair screeching against the floor. He couldn't take it anymore. As everyone stared in shock, he rounded the table in a few long strides. Under Isabelle's gaze, which held a flicker of triumphant amusement and a barely perceptible smile, he seized her wrist. What do you think you're doing? Isabelle's voice was laced with a theatrically engineered surprise, but her wrist only gave a token, strengthless struggle. Ethan ignored her completely, ignored Mr. Wallace's sputtering protests. His eyes were dark and terrifying, roiling with a storm of pent-up jealousy. He yanked Isabelle out of her seat, his voice low, forceful, and absolute. You're leaving with me. Without another word, ignoring the room full of dropped jaws, he pulled Isabelle, who followed his lead with a gait that could almost be described as light and pleased, and strode toward the door without a backward glance. Just as they were about to exit, Isabelle turned her head. Her face wore an expression of sincere apology, but her eyes danced with an unconcealed, triumphant smile. She raised her voice to the stunned Mr. Wallace. So sorry, Mr. Wallace. My boyfriend gets a little jealous. We'll have to cut dinner short. I'll make it up to you next time. My treat, somewhere even better. Her words hung in the air as the heavy door swung shut behind them, sealing off the dead silence that was surely followed by an explosion of chaos. They drove in silence. The air inside the car was thick enough to cut with a knife, the only sound the low hum of the engine. Isabelle's words from the private room. My boyfriend gets a little jealous, played on a loop in Ethan's head, each word searing his ears, a flush creeping uncontrollably up his neck. He could feel her gaze on him from the passenger seat, a hot, overtly amused stare. Isabelle was turned slightly toward him, watching with clear fascination as the blush spread from his ears down to his collar. Her stare felt like it was charged with a low-voltage current, making his skin prickle. His palms grew slick with sweat against the steering wheel. Finally, as he stopped at another red light, the relentless scrutiny became too much. He whipped his head around to face her, meeting her eyes, which were sparkling with mirth. His voice was tight with the frustration of being so easily read. Isabelle, would you just stop staring at me? Isabelle didn't stop. She laughed, a soft, musical sound that felt incredibly intimate in the enclosed space of the car. She drew out her words, her voice a lazy purr. What's wrong, my little boyfriend? You're not shy, are you? Where's all that domineering energy from when you dragged me out of there? You. Ethan was speechless, the heat in his face intensifying. He could only turn away, staring fiercely at the red light ahead, as if it held the secrets to the universe. The light turned green, and he stomped on the gas, a little too quickly. Back at Ethan's apartment, the door closed, shutting out the world. The stark light of the entryway was just as he remembered it from that first, life-altering night. They stood facing each other, the air still charged with the lingering intimacy from the car and a hint of his flustered anger. Why? Ethan broke the silence first. His voice was low and hoarse, but the sharp edge was gone, replaced by confusion and a sliver of residual fear. Isabelle, you know how I feel about you. Why would you do that? Why would you use that pig, Wallace, to get a reaction? What if? He thought of Wallace's greasy leer, and the needle prick of pain returned to his chest. Isabelle didn't answer right away. She leaned back against the entryway console, her posture relaxed, filled with the smug satisfaction of a predator after a successful hunt. She watched him, that familiar, possessive smile playing on her lips. Why? She repeated, her voice a slow, deliberate drawl. You really don't know? She took a small step forward, the click of her heel sharp on the floor. That in turn, Chloe, the way she looks at you, like she wants to devour you whole. Wiping sweat off your brow, bringing you lunch. So attentive, so young, so full of energy. Isabelle's eyes narrowed, her queenly aura filling the small space. I didn't like it, not one bit. So you deliberately. Ethan understood now, but the thought of her putting herself in that situation still made him angry. Yes, Isabelle admitted freely, a hint of pride in her voice. And it worked beautifully, didn't it? My boyfriend. She savored the last word, her eyes glittering. You see? You got angry. You pulled me away. You staked your claim in front of everyone. Ethan looked at her smug, mission-accomplished expression and didn't know whether to be angry or amused. The flush of embarrassment from the car returned. And what was that boyfriend thing all about? In front of Mr. Wallace of all people. Isn't it the truth? Isabelle raised an eyebrow, interrupting him, her tone matter-of-fact. From the moment you ordered that doll, no, from long before that. I never planned on letting you go. Ethan Hayes, did you really think you could escape after that night? She closed the distance between them, her fingertip tapping lightly on his chest. You were already mine. I just put my stamp on it. Tonight was merely a public announcement. Her bold, domineering declaration made his heart pound, but a deep-seated question finally surfaced. He took a breath, deciding to finally ask the one thing that had been bothering him for months. Isabelle, you're a millionaire. Why? Why would you live next door to me? In a normal apartment building like this? The smile and the look of absolute control on Isabelle's face froze. The impenetrable armor she wore seemed to crack. Her body tensed, her eyes darted away, and she quickly looked down, avoiding his searching gaze. All the effortless confidence vanished in an instant, replaced by the flustered panic of someone whose deepest secret had just been exposed, and a profound, buried vulnerability. After a long moment, she finally looked up. The rims of her eyes were red, and her voice was soft, laced with a near-pleading vulnerability that Ethan had never heard before. Because, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly with the weight of distant memories. I wanted to be closer to you, just a little closer. Under Ethan's stunned gaze, Isabelle began to speak, unearthing a long-buried past. Ethan, do you remember? 8th grade at Northwood High? There was a new transfer student, a skinny girl who got cornered in an alley after school by a few bullies. Ethan's pupils contracted. Fragments of a hazy memory sharpened into focus, a dim alley. A small, crying girl. A few aggressive, taunting teenagers. And himself, stepping forward to stand in front of her. "That was you," he breathed, finding it impossible to believe. "It was me." Isabelle nodded, her eyes filling with tears of gratitude and a love she had hidden for years. "You saved me that day. You chased them off. They threatened to come after me again. And you just threw your arm around my shoulder and yelled at them. 'She's my girlfriend. You dare touch her again and see what happens.'" The floodgates of his memory burst open. The image of a timid, pale little girl who always kept her head down slowly merged with the stunning, confident woman standing before him. He remembered everything. "After that, you really did keep them from bothering me again. Even though you forgot about the whole thing pretty quickly and you forgot about your fake girlfriend." A hint of bitterness tinged Isabelle's voice, but it was overwhelmed by sweetness. "But from that day on, Ethan Hayes, you took up residence in my heart. And you never, ever left." She raised a hand, gently tracing the line of his jaw as he stood there in shock. Her gaze was so tender it seemed to melt. "I watched you from afar. I followed you to the same high school. I worked my ass off to get into the same university as you. I watched you grow up, watched you graduate and find a job. I pushed myself harder and harder to become stronger, to become better, all for the day that I could stand in front of you as an equal, not as that pathetic little thing who needed your protection." Her tears finally fell, but her voice was incredibly clear and firm. "I finally made it, and I finally worked up the courage. Ethan, I love you. I've loved you since I was 12 years old, from the moment you created a safe space for me in that alley. And now that I've finally caught up to you, how could I possibly let you go again?" The confession, more than a decade in the making, washed over Ethan like a tidal wave of warmth, dissolving all his anxiety, his hurt, and his insecurities. Shock and elation flooded him completely. The red thread of fate had been tied so long ago, in the innocence of their youth. What he had thought was a chance encounter, a bizarre accident that night, was actually the inevitable result of her journey across time, fighting through every obstacle just to reach him. He pulled her into a fierce embrace, holding her as if she were a long-lost treasure. His voice was choked with emotion. "I'm sorry. Isabelle, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I forgot you for so long. It doesn't matter." Isabelle shook her head against his chest, her tears giving way to a smile. A mischievous, captivating light returned to her eyes, her queenly aura reasserting itself. "You know now," and she looked up at him, her voice a declaration. "You belong to me now." "Yes," Ethan nodded fiercely, kissing the tear track from her cheeks. "I'm yours. I always have been." With the past revealed and their feelings laid bare, a thick, sweet intimacy filled the small apartment. They curled up on the couch together, talking for hours, filling in the gaps of the years they'd spent apart, sharing the deepest secrets of their hearts. With their relationship out in the open between them, the sweetness level skyrocketed. At work, Isabelle was still the cool Miss Vance, and Ethan was still the consummate professional Mr. Hayes. But now, when their eyes met across a room, a silent current of understanding and affection passed between them, a secret language only they knew. After hours, Ethan's apartment became their sanctuary. But the matter of Chloe Summers remained a thorn in Ethan's side. He couldn't allow any more room for misunderstandings. The next morning, Chloe walked into Ethan's office, a cheerful bounce in her step, holding a stack of files. "Ethan, here are the..." She stopped short when she saw Ethan stand up, his expression more serious than she had ever seen it. "Chloe, have a seat." Ethan motioned to the chair opposite his desk. Confused, Chloe did as she was told, blinking her wide eyes at him. "What's wrong, Ethan? You look so serious." "Chloe," Ethan began, choosing his words carefully. His tone was gentle but unyieldingly firm. "Thank you so much for all your hard work and help over the past month. You're an excellent intern. But," he paused, looking her directly in the eye, "I need to be very clear with you. I have a girlfriend. We're very happy together, and I love her very much. So, I need you to stop with the gestures and concerns that go beyond a professional colleague's. It's making me uncomfortable. More importantly, I don't want my girlfriend to get the wrong idea." The smile on Chloe's face froze and shattered. Her eyes filled with shock, disappointment, and a flash of humiliation. Her mouth opened as if to say something, but seeing the resolute seriousness in Ethan's gaze, she simply lowered her head. Her voice came out strained. I understand, Ethan. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause any trouble." "You're a great person, Chloe." Ethan softened his tone. "We just weren't meant to be. Focus your energy on your work and on yourself. You'll find someone who's right for you." Chloe nodded, her eyes welling up. She clutched her files and quietly left the office. Watching her dejected form disappear, Ethan felt a pang of sympathy but mostly, he felt relief. This was better for everyone. However, life rarely unfolds as expected. Less than 5 minutes after Chloe left, the company's internal PA system crackled to life. Isabelle's distinct, cool voice filled the office. "Attention! All personnel, please report to Conference Hall 1 in 10 minutes for an emergency all-hands meeting. Attendance is mandatory." An emergency meeting? Ethan was puzzled. There weren't any major company-wide issues he was aware of, but an order from a CEO was an order. He quickly organized his desk, grabbed his notebook, and headed for the main conference hall, a sense of confusion growing inside him. The hall quickly filled with people, employees from every department murmuring among themselves, wondering what was going on. Chloe was there too, sitting in the crowd, her eyes still a little puffy. As the CEO's assistant, Ethan walked directly to his reserved seat in the front row. Just then, Isabelle appeared at the side entrance to the stage. She was wearing a powerful, brilliant white pantsuit today, looking every bit the Snow Queen. But she didn't walk toward the podium. Instead, under the watchful eyes of the entire company, she strode with calm, elegant steps directly toward Ethan. The entire hall fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Hundreds of pairs of eyes were locked on the two of them. Chloe's jaw dropped, her hand flying her mouth. As Ethan stared, completely bewildered, Isabelle stopped in front of him. Her face was a neutral mask, but she extended her hand to him. On instinct, guided by a wave of confusion and a strange premonition, Ethan took her hand. The next second, Isabelle pulled, hauling him to his feet. Then, to the collective, dumbfounded shock of every employee, she held his hand and, under the intense scrutiny of 1,000 questioning gazes, led him up the steps and onto the main stage. Standing in the center of the stage, facing the sea of people below, Ethan felt his heart hammering against his ribs. His palm was slick with sweat, but Isabelle stood tall and straight, her grip on his hand unwavering. She picked up the microphone, her sharp gaze sweeping across the audience. Her voice, amplified, carried to every corner of the vast room, ringing with an undeniable, world-shaking authority. "Everyone, thank you for your time." She turned slightly, her gaze shifting to Ethan, who was standing beside her, rigid with tension. A smile, a sight so rare in the office it was legendary, slowly bloomed on her cool face. It was a smile that could melt glaciers, filled with tenderness and pride. She raised their joined hands for everyone to see, her voice ringing out, clear and firm, echoing through the conference hall. "I'd like to formally introduce you all to Ethan Hayes, my boyfriend, and, by extension," she paused for effect, "your other boss." Boom! After a second of dead silence, the entire hall erupted. Gasps, shocked cries, and a tidal wave of frantic murmuring crashed through the room. The bombshell had left everyone reeling. "Mr. Hayes, the CEO's boyfriend, their other boss." Chloe was frozen in her seat, her eyes wide with utter disbelief. Ethan was just as stunned. He never, in his wildest dreams, imagined Isabelle would announce their relationship in such a spectacular, public fashion. He looked at the buzzing crowd, then at the woman beside him, at the unabashed love and possessive pride shining in her eyes, and a massive wave of warmth and indescribable emotion washed away all his tension. Amid the deafening roar and the hundreds of eyes locked on them, he tightened his grip on Isabelle's hand, lacing their fingers together. He straightened his back, met her smiling gaze, and a relieved, resolute smile spread across his own face. Their other boss? Huh. He decided he could get used to the sound of that. Time flew. Years later, in an exclusive, tranquil villa community on the outskirts of the city, Ethan Hayes pushed open the heavy, solid wood door of their home, bringing the crisp evening air in with him. The living room was spacious and bright, with massive floor-to-ceiling windows looking out onto a meticulously manicured garden. A slender, elegant figure was sitting on the cream-colored sofa that faced the front door, engrossed in a financial journal. "The kids are at my mom's. I'll pick them up tomorrow," Ethan said as he slipped off his shoes. He looked up at his wife on the sofa, Isabelle Vance. The moment his eyes landed on her, he froze. At home, Isabelle usually wore comfortable loungewear or simple, elegant dresses. But right now, she was dressed in an incredibly sexy teacher's outfit. Isabelle set down her journal, looking up at him. Time had been exceptionally kind to her, merely adding a deeper, more captivating maturity to her features. Her eyes sparkled with that familiar, mischievous glint, the look of a queen in complete control. Under Ethan's burning gaze, a knowing smirk touched Isabelle's lips. She rose slowly to her feet and, with an elegant, powerful gait, walked step by step toward her husband, who was now staring, completely dumbfounded, his breathing grown shallow. She stopped right in front of him, tilting her head back slightly, her queenly aura on full display. Her red lips parted, her voice a low, husky purr, a command that could not be refused. "Well now, my tardy student," she said, reaching out with one slender finger to gently lift Ethan's chin, forcing him to meet the fire burning in her eyes. "Are you ready for your lesson to begin?"